my most complimented date night fragrances for men of all time. Now, I just want to say that this is coming from the perspective of somebody who got into fragrance almost 6 years ago now, and really went through, the trials and tribulations, if you want to call it that, of, going down the rabbit hole of the fragrance niche and listening to people who were maybe a little dishonest, trying to just get a little bit of money and commission off of what they're trying to push out, and some of those people that were actually being genuine and honest, and after almost 6 years now, sort of garnering the experience after finding what actually works for me and what seems to be more true and more objective and mass appealing. And also, I just wanted to say that most of these fragrances are probably going to be more of those warmer fragrances for the colder sort of weather, the colder temperatures, the more nighttime sort of thing. But just know that fresh fragrance in general never is usually not appropriate. It's usually always very easy to wear and appropriate for almost all settings. Also, I'm going to try ordering these in the order of least complimented to most complimented, but still don't let that, make you shy away from anything, because they've all garnered me a really solid amount of compliments. Now, these first two fragrances I want to start off with might seem a little sketchy because I don't have them physically. One of them I just ran out of a while back, and the other one I just don't have, but trust me on them. The first one's gonna be Spice Bomb Extreme from Viktor & Rolf. Now this one I used to wear quite often, especially in that winter, fall, that sort of colder weather, or maybe more date night sort of setting. And that one had fantastic projection, I would say. Not super fantastic, or but just really solid, really good projection. And I find that one is very mass appealing, especially to the feminine nose. There is that vanilla in there, but really it's much more of this more fresh, spicy, but still warm. I think it's still warm because of the sweetness and the tobacco and the pepperiness and stuff, but it's more that fresh spiciness does come from those top peppers. But genuinely, the longevity and projection both are really, really solid on Spice Bomb Extreme from Viktor & Rolf. Now, the next one is gonna be La Nuit de l'Homme. Now, La Nuit de l'Homme, I've worn it just either from friends or at work when I was working for fragrance. And that one is another one that just really seems to just be this mass appealing fragrance to the feminine nose as well, which makes it so perfect for date night. Like I can see it as a more like everyday sort of wear, but it is leaning more towards those warm, spicy, aromatic sort of scent profiles. And it's just really, really nice. Now I have to say, the longevity and projection doesn't seem to be fantastic. It really doesn't. I would find myself reapplying it throughout the day, especially at work. And I promise that's not only just because I'm working with fragrance and I'm going nose blind, but genuinely, the longevity and performance just isn't really that great, and you'll probably want to be applying it just before date night or before going out sort of thing, and not really driving with your windows down or being prone to letting that scent blow off of you, you know what I mean? Now this next one is going to be Jean Paul Gaultier's Ultra Male. Now Ultra Male I know it's going to seem a little sketch at first as well. Now I'm bringing this up for a date night fragrance because it is more of this clubbing, crowded party sort of fragrance because it is so loud, but I think it can be acceptable in a date night, perfectly acceptable, so long as it's applied appropriately. And to me, applying appropriately would probably entail one spray to the back of the neck, and that's probably it. I wouldn't go further than that unless you're gonna be sort of like out where the wind's gonna be blowing on you constantly or something like that. But when you're in a car or a tight space, or a more enclosed space that's not getting a lot of constant airflow, and you're wearing this, it's gonna be pretty cloying. So I wouldn't go more than one spray for a date night. But this one I found to be a lot more appealing to the youthful crowd, I would say. A lot of the compliments that I've garnered from this have actually only been from people more around that late teen to late 20s sort of age range. And but it does seem to garner a lot of those compliments and be very nose catching. I also think since it's leaning more towards that unisex sort of side, that's what makes it a lot more appealing to the feminine nose as well, because of those vanillas. And that pear on the top is just beautiful, and that the projection and longevity of this is seriously insane. And yeah, genuinely, do not go more than one spray on this if you're using it in a date night setting. Now the next one is going to be Hugo Boss's Boss Bottled Intense. Now sadly, this one's been discontinued. And like I always say, I have no idea why, because this fragrance is seriously my favorite from the series of, well, probably Hugo Boss in general, but the Boss Bottled Intense series for sure. Now, the longevity and projection is actually going to be pretty much the opposite of Jean Paul Gaultier's Ultra Male. The longevity and projection might be the reason why this one got discontinued. It just doesn't last and project it's just not solid. You know, I would find myself reapplying it. It still garnered me several compliments, which was actually surprising, but now that I think back to it, it was more towards like 30 minutes after leaving the house sort of thing, never like hours beyond first applying it. And it's just this very warm, spicy, like cinnamon apple pie sort of scent. And it's just, it is a bit more gourmand in that sense. I think the lack of longevity and projection might actually be helping that scent a bit more and making it a bit more date night. Now, this one, like the last one I talked about, maybe it might be a bit more youthful in a sense. I see this one being more of like, I think this one would have been perfect for me in like high school if I had known about it, seriously. But with that being said, I genuinely do think it's still appropriate for all age ranges. I just see it being a little bit more cute and youthful. Now, the next one that I would recommend would be Jazz Club from Maison Margiela. Now, the replica line is really cool, and they really base all their stuff off of more like settings and scenarios. So Jazz Club really does capture those vibes of a jazz club or like a speakeasy sort of thing. It's got this tobacco and that's really smooth inside of it, and it leans more into like a smoky tobacco, but not in a way that sort of makes women shy away like the bottom of like a Ventus does. Or same thing with like By the Fireplace, which I ironically have a bigger bottle of, but as you can see, I don't really spray it because it is not mass appealing at all. By the Fireplace was honestly a mistake if you're looking for, you know, mass appeal, garnering lots of compliments sort of fragrance. Because this one genuinely does smell like campfire, like a bonfire, very smoky and burning sort of scent. Now, I honestly fell for it because I'm making it sound like it's a trap or something that I fell for, but I never really been around campfires or bonfires growing up too often. It wasn't until like maybe 3 or 4 years ago after picking this up, and I was trying to decide between these two, whether to get a full size or not. Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago, some friends invited me out to a bonfire, and next morning I woke up and my hair smelled like the bonfire. But when I woke up, I was like, I don't remember spraying this at all. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't spray this. It just smells so similar to an actual bonfire. And then that's when I realized, I was like, okay, this is probably why people say it's not the most appealing, or they're just really turned off by it sort of thing. But Jazz Club really does have that mass appeal to the feminine nose, and that smokiness with the tobacco is not an overwhelming smokiness. Now, the next one is going to be Side Effect. Now, Side Effect from Initio is another one of those fragrances that gives sort of like those lounge / speakeasy vibes like Jazz Club does, but in a much more like sweeter, dressed up sort of sense. This one is a much more like sweet, boozy, rum sort of thing. You know, the tobacco's still there, but it's not as smooth and smoky like Jazz Club is. I have to say, this one is really loud and very, very out there. So I would probably lean more towards my advice of Ultra Male, of spraying it once, maybe no more than twice sort of thing, on the back of the neck or like on the back of your shirt sort of thing. Same thing with Jazz Club, except I don't think it's that overpowering. I think you could get away with 2 or 3 sprays from Jazz Club for a date night sort of thing, but Side Effect, definitely crazy with the longevity and projection. And it does have that mass appeal towards the feminine nose. It's just very smooth, very, very simplistic. I think it's just cinnamon, tobacco, rum, and vanilla. I think that's really the basis of those notes. Now, this next one is gonna seem a little sus as well, but it is Carlisle and Herod. Now, I have Herod, and just like the same situation with Jazz Club and By the Fireplace, I really wish I would have opted for grabbing Carlisle instead of Herod. Now, Herod just doesn't last for me. It really doesn't, especially on my skin. My skin personally does not perform well with fragrance, so I'm usually spraying stuff on my clothes, but even when I'm spraying Herod, I don't know if you just go nose blind to it very quickly or what, but compared to Carlisle especially, this just does not have that longevity and projection. Now, I would say that's the same thing with the compliment factor with both of those as well. Carlisle seems to get a lot more mass appeal to the feminine nose and get a lot more compliments from women. Now, they both give that sort of warm, spicy vibe, but Carlisle definitely leans into it a lot more, and it's probably a lot more unisex, I would say. It has much more vanilla. It has a bit more of a patchouli, which I find the feminine nose is really attracted to as well, so long as it's not too dank or robust or anything like that. But sometimes when I was selling parfums to Marley or showing it to people, there would be the one in maybe every 5 or 10 that would opt more towards Herod instead of Carlisle, for women that is. But by the end of it, I just genuinely think Carlisle beats Herod 9 times out of 10. Now, number 3 on this list, before some honorable mentions, is going to be Silver Mountain Water. Now I know I said that most of these are going to be those warmer fragrances for the colder weather, colder temperatures sort of thing, but Silver Mountain Water is going to be the only exception in these top 10 and the honorable mentions that is going to lean more fresh and clean. And it's just because I genuinely think you can get away with it in any weather, and it is a much more intimate scent because of the lack of longevity and projection. And the appeal to the feminine nose is outrageous with Silver Mountain Water, I find, genuinely. You know, I used to work for Creed, but I always say that Silver Mountain Water has to be the magnum opus of Creed when it comes to compliments from a woman. I think it's just that ozonic freshness with that green tea in the middle as well, instead of having like these crazy hitting citruses on top like so many fresh fragrances do. This one's just a lot more different, and you're not trying too hard sort of thing, and it's just really easy to wear. I always tell this story when I'm bringing up Silver Mountain Water or Aventus, but when a couple would come up to me at the Creed counter, if the man was approaching me first, he'd be like, yeah, I want to smell Aventus, you know, I've been hearing so much about it. And then I would show it to him and he'd be like, oh, this is awesome. And then he'd show his girlfriend or his wife or whatever, and they would smell it and they'd be like, like, I don't know. And then I would usually reach and grab for the Silver Mountain Water and show that instead. And she would absolutely love it. And she would point at the Aventus and be like, you're not getting that, you're getting this. Now, number 2 on the list is going to be Tuxedo from YSL. Now, Tuxedo is a very beautiful, more dressed up sort of fragrance. Now, I would say it would probably help to be in a more dressed up occasion or dressed up date night, you know, maybe more fancy, mature dinner sort of thing instead of too casual. I just think the spices and the patchouli in there, I mean, the patchouli is the main thing in this fragrance, right? It's just so appealing to the feminine nose and to just in general. I would find the compliment factor in this one to be very balanced for me personally, but just leaning a little bit heavier into the compliments from women. And it's just the projection and longevity of this is so good. I mean, you really do get what you pay for when it comes to this one. But like I said, you're probably gonna wanna be a bit more dressed up, maybe even if the occasion isn't too grand or anything like that. Just maybe more collared shirts or sweater sort of vibes, you know? I definitely wouldn't wear this in shorts and a tank top or anything like that though. Now, my number 1 fragrance before getting to some honorable mentions is going to be Xershof's Naxos. Now, Naxos is just all around fantastic for date night. There's just this honey sweetness in it that's just like nothing else that I've ever smelled from any niche fragrance brands. The longevity and projection, the scent profile overall, and the appeal to women is what makes it all around just my favorite for this list, genuinely. I would find this one to be a little bit more towards the dressed up side too, but not to the factor that Tuxedo is, right? I think you can wear this a bit more casually. I probably still wouldn't opt to be wearing it in shorts and a tank top. I guess that wouldn't be too appropriate in a lot of date night sort of settings, you know? But this one's just very classy and nice, and that honey sweetness is just so different, man. And I think that sweetness also comes from a vanillin that's inside of this as well, and that tobacco is just made a lot sweeter as well. And it's not overpoweringly sweet or anything that leans a bit too feminine. It's still very unisex and masculine, especially when worn on a man. And I think it's just very appealing, especially leaning into the unisex side of things. Now, for the honorable mentions, I was just gonna bring up Ani from Nishani, Dolce & Gabbana, the one, the Eau de Parfum version, and then also Elysium from Roja Parfums. Now, the Elysium, of course, doesn't really fit into that warm, spicy thing. It leans more towards those fresher sort of fragrances, especially with the citrus in there. But the citrus from Elysium, I know it's crazy. I don't have it. It's on its way to me right now. That's what's going on. But the citrus in it is just so different and captivating and so appealing just to the general public. And I think it's appropriate to wear in a lot of settings, and it would be perfect in a date night setting as well. Now, I can't lie, Ani from Nishani, I've never smelled or gotten my nose on, but I've heard so many fantastic things about it that I'm dying to smell it. I really am, and I have to someday soon. But I really do trust what I've heard about it, you know, especially from the sources that I hear stuff from that I've never smelled before. I really do trust their opinions, and they've just all raved about Ani. And then for Dolce & Gabbana's The One, especially the Eau de Parfum version, I've heard a lot of great things, especially from the more youthful crowd, you know, maybe leaning more into those Boss Bottled Intense, Jean Paul Gaultier sort of youthful vibes, you know, maybe a bit more sort of late high school, early 20s sort of vibes there. I really hope you guys found this valuable. If you want to see more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification if you'd like as well. Leave a like. If you have any questions or any comments or anything, feel free to leave that in the comments, or I'll leave my Instagram down below if you want to shoot me a DM if you have any further questions or just want to talk more. But yeah, I hope you guys have a good one. God bless.